Looks like that worked, Christy. I see the streaming icon.
Yes, I just wanted to mute myself so that you didn't get a big echo effect. Okay, let's jump on in. Sid, it looks like you have the first question.
Yeah. How is it going with the transition to pajamas? But when are we estimated that we're done and in the promised land? Is there a burn down and maybe a burn up chart of like, you tend to be creating issues as well as burning them down? Any takes on that?
Yeah, I love that you call it the promised land because that's how I see it too. So we do have a Sisense chart. It is not completely built out. There are many, many, many issues that need to be created for basically an issue for every single instance of every component in the product. And so the foundations team is responsible for that, and they're creating them on a quarterly basis because it's a significant amount of effort. But I did link to the charts that we have available. And then Tori, let me turn that over to you.
Yeah, so we've been making good progress this quarter. We've closed over 100 issues of those individual component migration issues. Foundations team is currently working on getting those issues created for 4 additional components this quarter. But in terms of like a larger picture of when this will be completed, we do still have 20-ish components that will need to do the same work for. So that includes the discovery work to find all the instances. There's some accessibility updates that need to happen, and then ensuring that the front-end developers have migration guides so they know how the components need to be migrated if they are more complex. So there's still a significant amount of work to do. I see you have like pajamas day, weekend, month suggestion. Right now I'm working with Foundations team to create a migration day to kind of see if that will build up some momentum. But right now, our stopgap is really getting those issues created in Foundations and not necessarily the engineers needing to pick them up. The teams have been doing great with that this quarter so far. So we really just need to get that first discovery work done so that we know where all the instances are, so then engineers can do that work.
I do want to come back to Sid's number 7, but thanks for touching on it. And then I'll just mention that we will also have a shared KR in Q2 that we've already agreed on to do another round of component migrations. But let me pause on 6 and see, Sid, is there anything else on 6 you would like to know before we go to 7?
So when do we estimate it will be done?
We don't know. That's the real answer, is we don't know.
That's the data I understand.
Yep.
Cool. So issue creation is the most pressing problem. Who's creating those issues? Which roles are doing that?
That's the front end team on the Foundations group. So the front end engineers.
I've never heard before of issue creation being the problem. It's always closing them out with code. So I'm like,
this is the first time that it's
both
caught
a
up.
frightening and an awesome problem to have, because it might be easier to solve, or it's frightening because I don't know, it's different than anything I've looked at before. But it's like, yeah, how can we speed that up? It tends to be easy to describe the problem and hard to fix it. So what's the throttle here? Like, why isn't it easy to write? Well, not easy, but relatively fast to write down all the problems.
So I think there's a cultural element here where the stuff didn't get prioritized for a long time, and people sort of gave up and stopped populating the backlog. And so we're fixing that sort of cultural element. I think that's one part of it.
So the issues weren't picked up, so people stopped writing. That would make sense to me, Christy.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that. So even to find where these legacy components live in the product is an onerous process. It's not like you can just pop through the product and be like, oh, there's one. It's digging through the code. And then the front end engineers have actually written code to find those components. And that's what takes the time. And that's why they're going component by component and going, okay, let's find all of the instances of buttons. Okay, we've got them. There's an issue for every single button. Now we're burning down all of the buttons.
There's also an aspect of going through that discovery process and learning, oh, we don't actually have every variant that we need in GitLab UI and pajamas to be migrated. So the foundations team then needs to go and make sure we have those created so then they can be migrated, because if they're not there, they can't be migrated. So that's a significant factor as well.
So if I understand correctly, we now go component by component. So like that would mean that the same web page you touch like 15 times if there are 15 types of components on it. And from one hand, if you're creating pajamas, I can see the logic. You want to see all the instances of buttons so you can create a standardized component that addresses all the use cases. But the nice thing is that I don't know of all the problems there, so I can propose alternatives that might not work. So should we go page by page where you say, look, this page, we're going to make totally pajamas. And then if our standardized component doesn't address everything, we'll iterate on that and we'll add that later.
That's not a crazy idea. Tim Zollman and I discussed that at length before we embarked on this. And we went back and forth and like, here's the pros of this way, and here's the pros of that way. Where we eventually ended up was that I think because of, I'm going to say it ineloquently, and maybe Tori will make it sound better. It actually was easier to do it on a component by component basis. Now, there is an argument for, and we talked a lot about this too, is if you're going to make any change on any page in the product, I don't care what it is, and you see that there are existing legacy components, like just update them all at once. Tori, I think, can jump in now and tell me why that's a bad idea, because it's been a while since I've talked to Tim about
So when we were discussing like page by page versus component, what it ended up coming down to was by doing it component by component, Foundations is really able to help drive that and move it forward and provide the guides and make sure engineers know what to do. But if people were doing it page by page, then we're in a situation where, all right, now people need all these different components all over the place and Foundations just can't keep up. Now we're in kind of a place where Foundations isn't keeping up anyway, so we're in the same boat. But yeah, that's how we started on the component by component.
How many components do we have in pajamas, and what do you estimate we need?
So I have a list. We have I'm just going to guesstimate we have around 35, and we still have around 20 that we haven't started discovery work on yet. Quite a lot left to do.
So we have 2/3 of the work done, and maybe it grows a little bit. So maybe half of the work done, and when we're at the end of it, half of the eventual work done.
I would say we probably have a third done.
Okay.
And then Tori, it depends on the component as well, right? Because
Yes.
for example, buttons, there are so many buttons in the product, but for some components, it's very few, like alerts, there weren't a ton of alerts. So it really varies by component.
Yeah, and it varies by the number of component, and it also varies by the complexity of the component, which can take longer. So something like dropdowns takes a lot longer to build out, get ready for migration than a button, for example.
Cool. Thanks for that context. Let's move to number 7. Should we have a pajamas day, weekend, week, or month? Where we also ask the wider community to contribute and have tasteful and inclusive swag for people participating.
Yeah, we have done the hackathon as well, which has been successful. So we could certainly keep looking at doing something like that. I think the main hurdle right now is getting that discovery work done for components. So if we could have some sort of week or something where maybe engineers from outside of Foundations can help participate in getting those complete, then that would be really helpful.
Yeah, and I'll mention, we've had some wonderful contributions from the wider community who've gotten in there and they have done some of this work with us, and it was super helpful. So if there is an appetite to do something more dramatic with that, I mean, we're open. I want it done as soon as possible. So
So consider naming having components, having an attribution for components. So if you did all the discovery work on a certain component, your name is going to be obvious in the framework and you're going to get some swag.
that's a cool idea. Tori, do you have any questions about that idea? Or is it-
No questions. I think it's a good idea to explore.
Yeah, cool. Okay, I interrupted somebody.
Just want to say, Chrissy, happy to work with you on the swag. I'm working with the community relations team too. And we do have added UX as a theme in the hackathons. Happy to expand this further, make it more prominent with prizes.
Awesome.
Do we still have a non-functioning Epic link in the menus if people are using EE without a license?
I don't know.
It's, I think it's a horrible user experience. It's causing people to not use EE, which is a big problem because now they have a super hard time upgrading and they're much less likely to be a customer.
Okay, I will tell you, I don't know anything about this. I'm gonna have to go dig in and find out. But I can do that.
That'd be great. I'm really worried about if you look at downloads CE to EE, it's not good, and this was something that came up, and it's
Okay, I have my one-on-one with Justin tomorrow. Let me dig into this with him.
yeah, and there should be something that stops us as an organization from creating a bad user experience in the with. It's great that we want to convert people from free to paid, but no one likes menus that don't work.
Agreed.
Christy's team has been utilizing veto power recently. There's a couple of examples, so that is starting.
Yay. That is music to my ears. Brian, number 10.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for the following the new format. I know it's more difficult for your organization, but the prezo looks great. Please thank the team members that contributed.
Thank you. Thank you for that feedback.
Is research leading to implementations, or is implementations the bottleneck?
Yeah, if I'm understanding your question correctly, Sid, we're seeing a lot more work to get research leading to implementation. Some examples there are the CREATE benchmark study, which is a much more sensitive set of scores as compared to SUS. And also there's a big work around ops product direction and generally just more foundational research that's being generated now. As for the second part of your question, it can some research implementation can sometimes be a bottleneck. So we do track that through our actionable insights set of scope labels. And we happen to have a KR this quarter to look very closely to understand why that closed rate is the way it is. So we're meeting with a lot of the people that generated those to kind of understand, hey, it looks like you opened these actionable insights, which by the way, are derived from research, to kind of understand why hasn't this been acted upon yet? Why isn't it in the product?
Cool. My suggestion would be to be very careful with like where we hire in the UX org as a whole, and in your org, be very careful of how the researchers spend their time. If they make great reports, but they're not acted upon, maybe it's better for them to spend more time on blog posts that can invite, that are like really good for GitLab publicity, that help with our brand, and that tell people from the wider community how to contribute. Maybe that's time better spent. So be careful and creative on how you allocate time. So, because the worst thing is if you produce something that is not acted upon, because kind of the relevancy declines over time of what was produced.
Totally agree. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Brian. 12.
Yeah, I just noticed in the presentation that you hiring needs attention, and also there was some concern around attrition. Wanted to see if there's any common themes and or if there's any help that we could provide.
Yeah, thank you for that. Hiring is getting faster. Ursula has been wonderful. Rupert's always been wonderful, but having Ursula's leadership has absolutely helped. I'm getting far fewer complaints from my directs on the hiring process, and they're on this call so they can chime in if they disagree with what I'm saying. So I think we're moving in the right direction on that. Around attrition, maybe a little bit cautious what I say because this can be sensitive. We do have a little higher attrition right this moment. I am not yet concerned about it. I did talk to Rose about some of the factors that are going into that. So for example, you might think, well, maybe compensation is a problem. Well, we haven't seen that compensation is a problem. The things that would give me pause when it comes to attrition, I have not seen yet.
Great. Just if anything comes up, if you need help, feel free to reach out and I'm happy to jump in and help any way I can.
Awesome. Thank you. Do my Christy stare for a second in case anybody has some last things. Okay. Hey, Sid, thank you. You had some great questions and some great ideas. Appreciate it.
Welcome. Care a lot. This is a big lever for us. Better user experience. So care deeply about the work. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.